Food is an important component in life. It's the very essential necessity that fuels our hunger and power us through our daily lives, as they serve as our main source of energy. They can either be healthy or unhealthy since they come in many different forms, types, nutrients, and sizes. You got food for breakfast, lunch, dinner, appetizers, desserts, and a lot more. Different regions and cultures then come in hand to form what their food will be like, since background, environment, and lifestyle will affect people's own tastes, ideas, and takes on what food should be, look like, and taste like. I do think foods also have their own evolution lineage and variations, like when a different region has their own takes on a certain dish and food after it was introduced to them, or when foods can also have a different form into either a different version of it or a creation of a new dish after how different they've become. So there's just tons of variations of food for us to enjoy. That's why the culinary and the cuisine world exist after all, where many strive to learn, improve, and enjoy cooking. Because from all of that, food can also bring immense joy to our lives, especially when shared with our loved ones and friends. It can also spark interest, curiosity, and inspiration for people to explore new cuisines that are far different from their own. In turn, it can also make them gain a deeper appreciation for different cultures, histories, and the world at large just through food alone. In this way, I think food can also be a symbol of love and peace. But you know what I also love? Games! So if we combine the two of them, we get foods in games. While playing RPGs or adventure games, has anybody thought of what do the people in the game eat? It's a very random question that probably doesn't need an answer, but still, aside from cooking games, yeah! What do the characters eat in these games? Back then, developers didn't need to think much about it as games then left a lot of room for interpretation and for us to imagine them in our heads, like filling in the gaps of story scenes, character voices, levels, and the world design itself. Like, where do the NPCs even get their money from to live? What do they work as? Okay, that's outside of this video's scope. But as games become more graphically detailed and realistic, there's less room for us to use our imaginations for it. And so some games do address those gaps, like what kind of food the people of the game's world eat. Now, for games that take place in a more realistic-based setting, it's much easier to be done, as they basically can just eat the same food as us, just like how they did in GTA, for example. GTA San Andreas was the first game I played where you're able to go pick and eat foods. It kinda blew my mind when I was younger because 1. It was the first open world game that I ever played, and 2. You can enter restaurants.
It broke new ground!
You mainly eat there to replenish your health, and restaurants are mostly parodies of real-life fast food chains. And it was also kinda disappointing to see that they removed this feature in GTA 5 and it only got added to the game later on as a mod by fans. Please Rockstar, bring it back for GTA 6. Aside from restoring health, eating too much and you can gain weight in this game, which you can lose them and gain some muscles by going to the gym. Man, this game really strikes home with how real it can be. Other than just restoring HP, some games like Persona for example, they use food a bit differently. Basically, you can have your character go to a restaurant, eat there and increase the social stats of your character. The food do look nice, albeit a bit generic with the simple 3D models, but what the games are more known for in terms of food are the iconic food challenges, like the Mega Beef Bowl and the Big Bang Burger. Plenty of people have tried to replicate them in real life and they look awesome and glorious. They are basically just jumbovied version of their regular counterparts, but they are really huge. Eating them also boosts your stat increase further, and if your social stats are not high enough, well, you can't really finish them. I wish I can also improve my social stats like that in real life. Red Dead Redemption 2 is another game by Rockstar here in the list, with the food now being fully modeled in-game. The foods have a more rustic direction in terms of their presentation since they're going for a more accurate design for the food to match with the time period the game takes place in. They look fitting with what you would expect of foods that cowboys will eat. They look great but probably won't stand out compared to how modern food looks nowadays. Especially the food from the Yakuza series. The Yakuza games, or Like a Dragon, or Ryuga Gotoku, whichever name you wanna use, have shit tons of foods that you can pick to eat. Now mostly you will eat to replenish your health or buff up your characters for any battles ahead, right? But look at the attention to detail here. Most of the restaurants that you can enter to, they look really authentic. It's as I remember them from my last trip to Japan. And in Yakuza 0, well, it does look like it's straight from 80s Japan too. I don't know what about it, but it's just fun and pleasant to be able to enter any restaurants and pick any food to eat in a lot of games. It might sound like just an okay feature, but the novelty of being able to do it is nice since not a lot of games have this feature. And also I just like food. And the food in Yakuza looks great too. Yeah, most of them are JPEGs, but they're so varied with tons of options that you can pick from Japanese foods to even burgers. Basically, the food in the game has something for everyone. The food looks really good and delicious, so much so that I'll crave some food from playing the game. Like how I am now editing the video here, and I'm craving for a Yoshinoya beef bowl. Which brings me to... Did you know there was a Yoshinoya game for the PS2? It kinda plays a bit like Overcooked, except it's far simpler. It's just a simple QTE game where you serve beef bowls to the customers, and there are also bosses in the form of these unique customers, where you'll play a minigame serving them what else but beef bowls. And no, I certainly don't have any favorable bias towards Yoshinoya. Cooking games usually have food as the game's main objective, with the gameplay then needing you to create and cook them. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a niche genre, but you still got games like Cooking Simulator, which is a bit of a meme, plenty of older online flash games. I mean, who has never played Papa's Pizzeria before at one point in their lives? Then there are also some underrated games like Cook, Serve, Delicious. Those games are awesome and they're wild. But the cream of the crop of cooking games has to go to Cooking Mama. This game was the GOAT for the NDS. You can pick a lot of dishes that you can play and cook around with, as Mama then guides you along for all the mini-games that you'll play through for each stage of cooking the dish. And if you screw it up, well, Mama will just super kick you to the moon. The game's really fun as you'll be playing around with the DS's stylus for the most part, doing a lot of the mini-games. It's also pretty educational, dare I say, to the point that I feel like I learned a lot more about cooking the dish and feeling like I'm getting better as a cook. Something that can't be said when watching cooking guides by Jamie Oliver.
Hiya.
You can also start to appreciate some food as you get to understand how they are being prepared and cooked. The only downside is that some instructions aren't really laid out that clearly, so you'll need to tinker through it. Now, most of the games mentioned here were based on a more realistic setting, but what about games that have a more fantastical setting and world? With it being more fantastical, they're not bound too much with realism and they can be as creative as possible for the cuisine of those games' worlds, and even make them as good as they can be. Well, unless you are Skyrim. Okay, the sweet rolls in Skyrim look great, right? They're pretty iconic, but the rest of the food in the game? Yeah, they look as expected of what food from a medieval fantasy world will look like. They're not pretty. We can just chuck that being to the limitation of its time, of course, as well as just their direction of what the food should look like for the game, but since then, games got either graphically better or better visual direction, which includes the food too. They did get better. Like in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The two of them are open world games just like Skyrim, but with a lot of more tools, mechanics, and options that you can do in the game, which includes gathering ingredients and cooking foods. You can either buy ingredients from stores, or you can go at it like in Snake Eater by hunting and gathering your ingredients. Once you have all the ingredients that you want, you can just throw them to a pot like this and voila! Now, there are a lot of combinations that you can try to cook, which is like the huge part of the fun for me, seeing what combinations of ingredients would work with each other. There are tons of food here that you can even try to unlock all the recipes in the game, from veggies, seafood, meat dishes, to even a mix of them all. They all look great with them all being cel-shaded art that fits with the visual and art style of the game. And if you want to try out cooking the foods in real life, you can find and buy the fan-made unofficial cookbook, which you can buy on Amazon, or you can just do it from scratch without it. Another Nintendo Switch game in the list here is Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Now, the game features food as one of the ways for you to buff up your character and your Pokémons. There are various meals here that you can find in places ranging from cafes to restaurants. The art for all the meals are beautifully made, and some of them even have a cute design to them, like having it shaped like a Pokémon. But one of the heavily featured foods in the game are sandwiches. Now, you can find and buy some sandwiches from a sandwich parlor like this one, where you can even buy this zesty sandwich? I mean, if it's delicious. Or you can do it the more fun way, where you can start a picnic and make your own sandwich. You can either make a pretty good looking sandwich or a truly abysmal one. What makes it more fun is that you can also make sandwiches with your friends online and you can go crazy with them. Though you'll need to have enough ingredients to make the sandwich that you truly want to make, and depending on those, it will give out different stat bonuses. Now, if you've either watched or played Pokémon before, I bet you at least you've had a thought of like, what do they even eat in the Pokémon world? Do they eat the Pokémon themselves or what here? Now, the game kinda answers that, but also doesn't. Because even though there are various foods and restaurants that they eat here, it doesn't really answers where the ingredients for them came from. Like, did they get this bacon from Lechonks? And well, we'll probably never know. They'll probably never give an official confirmation to it and just leaving it to our imaginations. Square Enix is no stranger for having plenty of enticing looking food in their games. Like in Kingdom Hearts 3, you can go to this fancy looking bistro owned by Scrooge McDuck and cook some fancy dishes with little chef Remy here, which is a great callback from the Disney side of things to add for the cooking side quests. You'll have to play a mini game for each dish as you'll need to unlock and cook all of them as part of the side quest storyline, in which you'll be given a Keyblade. To be able to start cooking them, all you need is to have the required ingredients that you can find throughout the game. Once you've cooked them, you can select and eat them for extra stat buffs for your party. And let's not forget, all the fancy dishes here looks incredible. You even got Ratatouille like from the movie. And this dish, however you pronounced it, but it looks so appetizing. They all look really well crafted, even though yes, they are mostly drawn art like the food from Zelda and Pokémon. But I feel like they are more detailed and sophisticated, with them being fancy dishes and all, and they look expensive. It fits with the overall aesthetic of the game, and it's as if they came straight out of a fine dining restaurant. Which also applies to the food in Final Fantasy XV as well. Previous Final Fantasy games like in Final Fantasy VII, you can eat a Korean barbecue in Wall Market in Midgar. Didn't know Korea existed in Final Fantasy VII. Then in Final Fantasy XIV, you got the Culinary and crafting job, which you can craft food, eat it for stat buffs before raids for example, or you can sell them onto the market board. But ultimately, Final Fantasy XV takes the cake here, because look at it! My god, they look gorgeous! The food I mean, not, you know. So the game has you basically go to any camp spot that you can find on the map as the day goes dark, otherwise demons will spawn. Then you set up camp and Ignis then will cook up dinner for the party as you're able to select which meal for him to cook. And he has outdone himself here with all the new recipes that he came up with. Now there are shit tons of dishes that you can select on camp, with each meal having their own stat buffs and the required ingredients, which you can get by rummaging through ingredient spots, buying them, battling out beasts and animals in the world, or from fishing. Ignis can also learn new recipes by buying food from diners that you encounter. Looking at the game's food just makes my mouth waters. Now imagine cooking them while camping in real life. Yeah, they won't look as good as this. They're on par if not looks better than the food from Kingdom Hearts 3, because they're also fully 3D modeled instead of just being a JPEG. Which might be a detriment for the game, but that's for another video. The direction of the food here takes a less fancy and high-class approach, but it still kinda does, not to the extent of Kingdom Hearts 3 though, but more so that it's pretty hearty while still attaining that high-level presentation that, for the most part, looks better than a lot of food that you can find in real life. The graphics of them also look really good too as in-game models, with the textures and lighting and all. And the foods even have physics to them. The game even has cup noodles in it. Cheese curry is my favorite though. So if you need some cooking inspirations, you can probably try playing this game out and get some plenty of references from Ignis. The only downside for most of the food here though is the serving size. Yeah, I don't think they're enough to fill me up for the most part. but they do look stunning. And so, if we're gonna go for a really gargantuan and barbaric portion and presentation right, then we'll have to go to Monster Hunter World. Now, like the name suggests, we basically hunt monsters in the game for research and ecological reasons. And no, we are not hunting them for fun. This is sarcasm, by the way, if you didn't realize. We also sometimes stop calamities from happening in the game. So as a way to support our struggles, we got this huge platter served to us. They look comically huge, but at the same time, they look tempting as hell when you are hungry. Now, in the game, you just need to head to the canteen and pay either money or points to eat, which will buff up your character right before you hunt, with also the huge amount of proteins that you'll probably burn throughout your quest. At the beginning of the game, you get served a smaller serving of food, but as you progress through it, the canteen gets better and you eventually get served the glorious serving of food that a proud hunter like you deserves. And they're also being cooked by these cute felines. Don't know about the safety inspections for it though. In Iceborne, you got introduced to a new snowy region alongside a new HQ. The canteen there gives you a different platter of food to fit with the snowy and wintry vibes of the expansion and the new area. Of course, these aren't the only food that you can find, as the game has many seasonal events which you can see by going to the Gathering Hub. Ordering food there then will serve you meals based on each events. So you got Chinese food, seafood platter, fancy platter, and more. Some people even have tried to replicate the Chef's Choice platter, which looks amazing. It also seems to be a fun content to do, making video game foods in real life. Maybe I shall make one in the future. Can't wait to see how the Chef's Choice platter will look like in Wilds in its full glory with the RE engine. So in the end, I think the games that have the best looking food goes to 4 games here. First is the Yakuza games. Okay, that's slightly cheating because I was more referring to the series than just a single game, but the food and the restaurants there are really well made. Then we got Kingdom Hearts 3 with the fancy bistro and menu, followed by Final Fantasy 15 with Ignis' insane recipes. And lastly, Monster Hunter World with the huge delectable platter. Can a restaurant try making and selling it in real life so I can try it out? Thanks. Now, a lot of these foods do look more exaggerated and better than how food mostly looks like in real life. And I know that might not appeal to some people that prefer their food in games to look more realistic or bland. But those games do exist, like plenty of cooking games or Red Dead Redemption 2 for having a more realistic approach in terms of the food design. But I do like to think that developers make them look good so that they can showcase how good food can be. Perhaps it can also make you crave them or hungry from looking at them, so you won't forget to eat while focusing on playing your games. Just to show how people can appreciate food not only in real life, but also in games too. What do you guys think? Any games that I might have missed out on? Let me know down below. Hope watching this video makes you guys hungry. As for me, well, I'm starving for making this video, so I'm gonna go get something to eat